Because we strongly believe that knowledge grows by sharing. The more you share, the more people respond to that, and ultimately, state of knowledge and the minds of people grow collectively. So that those were the reasons why we even embarked on this endeavor. But I think probably what helps is that I think a lot of the initial founders who were the flag bearers of the startup ecosystem in the country happened to be from IIT. Of course, IITians are sharp and they have this hunger to solve business problems. Naturally, once they saw a few success stories emerge, all of them jumped onto the bandwagon and went.
Hello and welcome to an entrepreneurship special of the iRonik show. Our guest today, Sahil Vaidya, is the co-founder of The Minimalist, which is an Indian creative solutions agency and making its imprints globally with customers like Berkshire Hathaway, Coca-Cola, Abbott, and lot many. This it's not every day that you get to speak to someone who has been featured on Forbes, and I had the privilege of speaking to Sahil. And this podcast personally is a learning curve for me. In this podcast, we spoke about Sahil's IIT life, his entrepreneurship journey, the spiritual side of Sahil Vaidya. Trust me, this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg. The discussion that I had with Sahil after the podcast really gave me a lot of insights into Sahil's mind, his personality. Go ahead, enjoy this podcast with Sahil Vaidya, and I'm sure this is going to give you a lot of new perspective about spirituality, about entrepreneurship, about meditation. Enjoy. Hi, Sahil. Very warm welcome to the iRonik show.
Like,
And your so first, before we even start, before any thank you or anything, why the name minimalist? It's really I've been really curious to ask you this.
right. Yeah, we've answered that many times because everyone's actually very curious, and
Right.
that itself does half the job that that name was supposed to do, which is to intrigue people and generate curiosity. But that's not the only thing. Actually, it started way back in 2015 when my co-founder and I we were studying engineering at IIT Bombay, and more than engineering, we were interested in creative pursuits, like most engineers. So my partner was into design, I was into writing and humor. And when we were doing all of that, we were really passionate about putting out things, putting out content that people would look at and be really jealous of and feel like, wow, where did they get this idea from? And that's those are the two passions we wanted to combine when we started the minimalist. And we realized that if we really want to do that thought-provoking work, minimalism is the best tool to
Right.
sort of create that impact, to let the user think and have that aha moment and be like, oh, wow, that was very smart. How did they come up with this? And when we started, minimalism was a very small thing. It was not a trend globally, leave alone India. So
Mhm.
that's what we thought, we'll own this space and we'll use this as a very potent tool for creating thought-provoking and very inventive work, and hence the name The Minimalist.
Okay. So again, welcome to the iRonik show. Your story really intrigued me. IIT Bombay, two IIT Bombay graduates. One, I think he's from your co-founder is from. You're from energy background, right?
Yeah,
Energy. You have energy,
I'm an energy
and
engineer. He's a chemical engineer.
he is a chemical, and two distinct fields, and you guys come together and build a global design consultancy. Then I read more about you. Then I came to know that you both actually always already have been in you had that design wala creativity wala वो थोड़ा आपके दिमाग में हमेशा से था. You are more into the humor side of it, writing side of it, and your co-founder was more into the designing side of it. If I'm not wrong, please correct
Right.
me. So थोड़ा सा आप sir, before we even get into your company and everything, Sahil, please let us know how that journey started, your
Yeah,
early days.
of course. So when all of this started, I was just finishing my third year at IIT, and both of us were doing our internships and traveling together to just save money, traveling the same auto every day. And he was interning at an advertising firm, and he was very clear that Chirag was very clear that he wanted to get into this space. I, on the other hand, was just wasting time at some random internship, drinking coffee and just doing nothing all day. And when we were doing that in the course of those auto rides, we were always chatting about creativity and marketing and all. Not really marketing, but effective communication and how we can do something thought provoking that breaks the internet. And then one day I was just randomly saying that people beat up dogs or throw stones at dogs for no reason. So he said that maybe we can make a interesting communication on this social issue. And then I felt that yeah, I mean we should do that because this guy anyway puts out a lot of content and it gets a lot of traction. So we might as well join hands and do something together. And who knows, that can just get a lot of traction. It would be a very new concept. And we thought that maybe we can target all social issues in the country and just make some very intriguing communication about it because no one's really doing it. And there's a big space for some very original content creation that doesn't happen in India or even globally. So that's where the idea of the minimalist uh, was created, and it started as a Facebook page. It didn't start as a company. And when we
Right.
started putting out that those witty, thought-provoking pieces, they suddenly started going viral after a while. And overnight, not overnight, but in the course of a year or so, we had almost 100,000 organic followers, and we were actually creators, what you today call creators. We were
Right.
doing that in 2015 without even knowing it, right? And that too on Facebook.
And
And
when
looking at,
Facebook was something,
yeah,
it was the thing actually.
Facebook was the thing a few years back. It was receding. That like the
Yeah.
heyday was behind it. Yeah, I mean, I think 2015 was marking one of the receding years for Facebook as Instagram was rising. But we still were building our community on Facebook, and we were doing community building without even knowing we were doing that. We were doing moment marketing without even knowing it's called moment marketing. Every time a news piece would come out, we came up with our own minimalistic take on it, and it would go viral. And that is what we today call moment marketing. But
Right.
we had pioneered it 7, 8 years ago without even knowing we did it. So those were the things that were happening, and that's how a lot of brands were noticing this, and they started reaching out to us saying this. Why don't you do our marketing, or why don't you do our campaigns, or our UI UX, or our brand strategy? And that's how the minimalist went from a content creation platform or just being a creator to a proper full-fledged creative solutions company.
So from a Facebook page and to a global design consultancy today, what you guys are. So that's really something. I mean, that's I think the OG content creation we should call you.
Yes, yes. And in fact, so it's not just design, it's actually creative solutions because
Exactly.
design is one part of the offering.
Hmm.
So it could be marketing, it could be brand strategy, it could be UX consulting. So all of this, why we call ourselves creative solutions is because brands have business problems, and creativity is the medium via which you offer a solution to those business problems. That could be across figuring out a good brand strategy or doing performance marketing or doing UX revamps. It could be across the board. But what's common is creative solutions and doing really inventive work to solve those problems.
So before we even get deeper into your, the company that you built, how you built it, and so let us just go where it all started in IIT Bombay, right? So you are from a different branch. Your co-founder Chirag was from a different branch. You two met there, and so it so happened that you started creating something. And then tell me that ऐसा क्यों होता है साहिल कि ये जो आईआईटी वाले हैं ये इतने सारे स्टार्टअप फाउंडर्स आईआईटी से निकलते हैं सो व्हाई इज दैट सो व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन आईआईटी ग्रेजुएट एंड ग्रेजुएट चलो आईआईटी से जो थोड़ा एक स्टेप नीचे देन देयर आर लॉट ऑफ ग्रेट कॉलेजेस आउट देयर सो व्हाट इज दैट बेसिक डिफरेंस कि इतने को-फाउंडर्स इतने स्टार्टअप्स आईआईटी से निकल के आ रहे हैं
I mean, I could give you a very rosy answer about how IITians are different from the rest, but I don't think that's true. IITians are just like the others. Of course, they are very smart, and in IIT, I always felt like the dumbest person in the room, and everyone feels that way. Although that's
okay
paradoxical, but everyone feels like they are the dumbest person in the room. But that's not to say that the IITs are totally different from the rest of the colleges. We are seeing startup founders from many other colleges like BITS and NITs and so many of the other regional colleges also. But I think probably what helps is that I think a lot of the initial founders who were the flag bearers of the startup ecosystem in the country happened to be from IIT. Of course, IITians are sharp and they have this hunger to solve business problems. Naturally, once they saw a few success stories emerge, all of them jumped onto the bandwagon. And when funding became relatively easier to acquire over the years, I think more and more people have been incentivized to use their skills, use their hustle, use their organizational and team building capabilities to sort of use this capital, use their knack for problem identification and org scaling to start companies. So I think it has, and of course, investors naturally find the IIT tag very attractive.
Hmm.
And it works everywhere, right? So IIT is more like a brand. It's more like a validation that nobody will fire me for throwing money at this IIT. And I mean, maybe that's what the investor psychology is like. And that's probably one reason why so many IIT IIM founders are always seen everywhere as compared to other colleges. But that said, I'm sure other college people, people from other colleges are also building some amazing ventures.
So it's just an unspoken validation that the ROI would be justified, and the funders' money is safe when they are betting on an ITN.
I mean, money is never safe, but you will
Obviously,
not get fired if you lose that money betting
huh?
on an IITian, maybe. That's the
Right,
only thing.
right. So what is the life in IT like?
Uh, it's very, if I had to describe it in one word, it'd be madness.
Okay.
People think that IITians study all day and are these nerds, but that's totally not true. Actually, in IIT, people have come after studying a lot and sacrificing 2 to 3 years of the best years of their life. So naturally, they have this deep-seated urge to go out and try everything in the world except academics. And therefore, what you see is people trying hundreds of things, people getting into cultural activities, sports, travel, whatnot, right? And so every day in IIT, there are 2 to 3 events happening. There would be probably some kind of an art workshop. There would be a probably photography walk. There would be a stand-up session. There would be some sort of a hackathon. There would be probably a football match. There would be a year, and there are these year-round competitions, in inter-hostel competitions, performing arts festivals, music festivals, dance festivals. So I mean, it's just an overload of cultural and extracurricular activities, and academics probably happens on the day before the exam. So that's what IIT life is all about. Everyone's involved in everything apart from academics. Of course, that's not to say everyone does that. I'm giving my own perspective because I was probably more skewed towards all of these things because I was into drumming, I was into writing, I was just very social, so I was just loitering around, doing everything apart from studying for my exams. So that's what IIT life is like, and probably that's what helps people in the future. This networking skill, this knack for team building, organization
Yeah.
building, making big events happen. So people are mad about events like TechFest and Mood Indigo, and it's really an organizational challenge to sort of pull off an event at such a scale. And kids are doing it at the age of 19 or 20. So they naturally pick up a lot of skills, which probably help them later in life in acquiring leadership positions or running companies.
Right. So just a casual question. So I have seen IIT Delhi, I have seen IIT Bombay. I don't know about the other IITs, but these two IITs are located in the heart of the city at the prime locations. So what was your favorite chilling space place
Chilling
in
place.
and around? Yeah, in and around IIT. I think it's closer to Powai.
Right, right. So in
Okay.
IIT, we used to really chill a lot at there's this hostel 13, and it overlooks the lake and the entire
Okay.
Powai skyline, so it gives a beautiful view. So we used to hang out a lot over there, and in general, we also used to hang out a lot in our wings itself. Wings is like a collection of rooms where so people you sort of stay with, the selection of rooms who have two people in each room. So we used to hang out a lot in the wings also, and I used to spend a lot of time in the music room because I was practicing drumming.
Hmm.
So in jamming sessions, I would spend a lot of time in jamming sessions, jam rooms, on stage also many times.
Great. Okay. Now coming back to minimalist. So what I could find out that minimalist is still a bootstrapped company. It's not funded yet,
Right.
right? So building a bootstrapped company uh, in today's day is a tough job, tough, very tough job, right? Everything because you need to have customers to support the salary of your employees that you have hired, to support your lifestyle that you have, right? So what are the challenges that you and your co-founder faced in the initial days?
Yeah. Initially, of course, like you said, we had 0 rupees in our pockets to put anything in the business. So it was a bootstrap from hell because we had to literally use the first monies that we got from our initial clients to
Hmm.
pay the deposit of our first office, then get newer cash flows to sort of pay off maybe interns or 1 or 2 employees that we had initially hired. And in fact, hiring also was so difficult because who would trust these two people pretending to be creative and trying to build a company, right? And who have barely even gotten out of college. So, even hiring or getting the right material to sort of kickstart the growth of the company was a big challenge initially. Um, Even cash flows are a big challenge in India. Thankfully, we have
Hmm.
never had very major existential issues because of it, but doing business is very difficult. And law enforcement is one place where I don't think we have made as much progress.
Mhm.
We still have no legal recourse when companies refuse to pay for any random reason. So that is one of the big challenges that we have faced. And of course, the biggest challenge I would say was that we were entering a field that we had no clue about. So I think for the first 3, 4 years, it was just learning about how this space works. In fact, even today, it's a lot of learning, relearning, unlearning, realizing how these things work because we are always playing catch up, right? This industry has
Yeah.
been around for a very long time and we were not steeped into it. Neither had we ever worked in this industry. In fact, we had never worked in a company before. Our first job was to build our own company. So, even knowing about how basic functionalities are there in any office was something that we were totally blind to. So, that process of learning was very, very long drawn out. We had to constantly absorb how things work in this industry. What are the levers that you have to sort of hit in order to grow quickly? And all the while, we had to do this while we were delivering to clients. So it was learn, apply, and
Hmm.
make mistakes, relearn. So that cycle constantly went on and it still goes on. But of course, today it goes on at a probably a lower scale than it was initially. Because initially we were totally clueless.
Right. So I could actually connect with you. I mean, not from a founder's perspective, obviously, because I have been since the beginning of my career, I have been associated with companies which have been typically the startups. Uh, Maybe not exactly startup, but they were just 1 or 2 years in the of their existence in the market. So I, in the initial days of my career, I worked in those companies. So I literally saw that there were many products that we were building, the companies were building. That was because there was one customer who believed in them, and on basis of that customer, they could actually build that test, rebuild, and then finally they could have the final packaged product, and then they could take it to other customers. Like, now that this customer XYZ customer has taken this product and it is running beautifully in their environment, why don't you try it? So that first customer belief is really important for any startup.
Right.
And then you went on to land customers like Berkshire, Coca-Cola, for that matter, Abbott. So these are global giants. So how did that happen? How did this? I mean, they could have, these companies have the resources that they can hire anyone and everyone.
Right.
So why did they believe in, as you mentioned in your own words, the two nerds that started, and so how did that happen?
Right. So it's actually just like you said, once you have proof of concept that, these things are working, you can slowly ladder your way up to the biggest brand in the world. And that's exactly what happened. What also helped was that we were not just another player in the market vying for their business. They also could see that there's something different over here because
Hmm.
these guys can walk the talk and they have already built a very big, flourishing community with work that is very atypical. So they saw that unusual approach. Our story was also very unusual, and I think that is what has helped us open a lot of doors at some of the biggest brands in the world as well as in the country. And that story continues to help us today. Although now it's fairly established, and now it's purely about delivering the right value because now we don't have to constantly prove ourselves. But initially, I think that unusual story, that unusual approach to building a company by already proving your traction through big social media content following was really helpful, I would say.
Uh, so how did that? How did you feel when you got to know that you were in the first 30 under 30 in Asia?
Yeah, that
How
was a
was
good
that
feeling.
feeling?
It was good, but like all feelings, that feeling was also impermanent because all feelings are impermanent. And
Let's not be humble in this podcast. Let's just blurt it out. How did that feel?
no, no, of course it feels great. But what I'm saying is that these things are just, they just come and go. So it's not like it's some ultimate mountain that one has crossed. And I think bigger achievement would be to be able to do this and to be fortunate enough to get business from brands and to be able to build a company without any major roadblock. I think that is a much bigger, that gives much more joy than awards or accolades. You know, this just this opportunity that we could do
Right.
this, that we were not probably stillborn, or we were refused this opportunity, or that we could not do it beyond, let's say, 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, because most companies are not able to take off, right? For some reason or the other, the startup mortality rate is so high.
Yeah,
So we are very
absolutely.
fortunate that we're able to travel this path and come so far and get all the recognition.
So that was Sahil so धोनी like answer कि process पे focus करो, result जो होगा देखा जाएगा. चलो, we'll let it be. Okay, so other than being a founder, being a nerd, being an IITian and all that, you're also a avid reader and an author. I went through your blogs, right? Okay, we'll talk about that later. You have authored a book, Think Like the Minimalist. So can you please share some, what exactly is the book on, what have you shared in that book?
Right. So the reason we wrote the book was multifaceted. So I'll tell you, initially the idea of writing a book was there in our minds probably 3, 4 years ago, but we always kept sort of delaying, like most personal projects that are very time consuming.
Mhm.
We said that, yeah, maybe we'll do it at a later date. And that tomorrow kept happening till we hit 2022. And then we realized that, now is the time. But I'll tell you how this idea even came into being in the first place, right? So ever since the minimalist started, we have been invited to share our views on how we create that magical creativity, how we create that content which has won millions of hearts, and how this process of minimalism just doesn't restrict itself to social media content, but it goes beyond to larger marketing campaigns or video production or UI UX, right? It actually is a much larger philosophy. It's not just a mini approach to creating viral content, right? So we have been invited by a lot of colleges, institutions, even brands and companies to take workshops on what is the philosophy of minimalism, how have you used it to create a very viral following, and create all of that content that one has won so much traction and has won so many hearts. So we used to take these workshops, and over time what we decided was that we'll also give some of our team members and some of our designers a chance to lead those workshops, right? So our leaders, our designers, they also started taking college workshops with the same material, right? And what we realized was that when everyone was taking these workshops and getting students to dive into the process of minimalism, the proprietary techniques that we use to create that witty, thought provoking content, people are able to produce that output very easily. In fact, people who are taking the workshop had themselves learned it in our office somehow by process of observation, repetition. And then they were able to teach it also. And people in colleges or institutions were able to pick up and start producing that output. So we realized that this is not just an art, and creativity just doesn't descend from the clouds into your head and you get a random idea and that's the end. And there's no science to it, right? There is a clear process to it. There is a technique. If you sort of repeat that technique, if you get into the nuances, you can also master it. Anyone with a slightly creative bent of mind, they can learn how this process works and start applying it across various contexts. So this book was an attempt to crystallize that knowledge, everything that we have learned over the 7 years, 8 years, in into a book that anyone could read and sort of apply those techniques to get better at marketing, at design, at branding. So that was the main reason we wrote it. And the other was also that in India, knowledge sharing doesn't happen at the scale that it should, especially in
Mhm.
the marketing and creative community. So this was our way of giving back to the community. We have open sourced the entire IP, and I think a lot of people have really appreciated that as well. That in this industry, everyone sort of just sort of keeps their cards to their chest. So here we have sort of gone out and shared everything openly because we strongly believe that knowledge grows by sharing. The more you share, the more people respond to that, and uh, ultimately, state of knowledge and the minds of people grow collectively. So that those were the reasons why we even embarked on this endeavor.
Great. So other than your book, you have also a blog that you write, regularly, which is Sahilist, right?
Yeah,
So I was going through that blog, and my God, it's not only one topic that you touch upon, from technology, spirituality, challenging the social status quos. So you're capturing everything. So how does that everything come to your mind? Okay, so let me just ask you a couple of questions
Right.
which really intrigue me. One is that you have spoken a lot about AIML in your blogs, in your tweets, regular feeds that I see. So what is your take on AIML? So there is a school of thinking which says कि AIML आएगा तो हमारी तो जॉब चली जाएगी. There is still that thinking, right? The new thinking is that AIML will not take your job, it will bring in more jobs, it will create more opportunities, and you will be working on something which needs human brain application. So what is your take on AIML?
Yeah, I mean, there are many people who think AI/ML will make them aimless and jobless in life. So there are extreme reactions. Uh, One set of reaction is the utopianism that utopia is just around the corner. One is extreme negativity that everything is lost and our jobs will be gone and
Hmm.
all. Some people also are on the other end of the spectrum saying that no, no, this is not very significant. Yeah, it's interesting, but there's nothing to it. I probably feel that. So while I am not educated enough to give a hot take on this topic, based on my limited understanding and whatever I've read, I feel that maybe the answer will be somewhere in the middle. In the short term, maybe these tools will augment human skills and really help those people who can use them. But I also feel that we need to be cautious about these as a collective civilization because we never know where this will go, what will be the emergent thing. So some people, I was listening to some researchers and they were also saying that maybe this will also hit its limits. So what has happened is in the recent times we have seen this kind of a curve in terms of what it can do, but that exponential growth curve in AI's capabilities has only come in the last few months or probably a few years. But when you zoom out and look at a century long span, maybe even this will hit its limit. So we never know when this is going to stop, uh, how much disruption is going to happen. It's anyone's guess. But all we can do is have a balanced mind and approach it with an open mind and see what parts of our jobs can it start doing and constantly learn and keep ourselves updated so that we are at least being proactive in terms of how it can help us become more productive, how it can remove the really nasty pieces of our jobs and help us do much better. If we can just do that much, I think that's the best. And beyond a point, nothing's in our control. So we can
Yeah.
only focus on what we can do, which is to stay updated, try to tinker around instead of all the doom and gloom. I mean, even if it's a doomsday scenario, just fretting over it won't really help. What will help is action, not reaction. So maybe that's what is the way forward. Even I am learning about this every day. I'm not qualified enough to give an opinion, but that's what I feel we ought to do right now.
So technology, I believe, is definitely there to help you, right? Because now if you look at today we are speaking about AIML, right? 15-20 years back when computers came in, people यही thought तब भी था कि our jobs will be gone. Indeed, what it did कि it just revolutionized the entire employment and everything. It revolutionized the complete world. Jobs increase way, right? So it's better to keep an open mind about that. Okay. So my second question to you, Sahil, is being an young founder, right? So in today's world, पहले एक बात होती थी women equality की. Now a new term has come which is women equity, right? So being a founder and being a leader, you always आपको hiring तो आप करते ही हैं. So when you hire, so what ये जो आपका मेल वर्सेस फीमेल का जो एक हमेशा इवन नॉर्मली मैं बता रहा हूँ कि एक रहता है ना एक मेल कैंडिडेट को इस पर्टिकुलर पोजीशन के लिए. Now let me give an example. For suppose a sales position. So typical mindset ये होता है what I have seen, most of the organizations, sales है तो उसमें आप women को ले लो, sorry मेल को ले लो एक, because they have to run around the field. But on the other hand, women can be excellent sales, saleswomen. And as a society, do you think कि हम अभी भी उस पोजीशन पे आए हैं जहाँ पे हम अपने आप को कह सके yes we are now not biased to only one, which is the male part of it. अब हम we are equally accepting everything. Do you still think कि हम उस पोजीशन पे आ पाए हैं?
No, I think while the conversations have started, which is a great thing, and in many places people are starting to implement norms that help women also and steer away from the biases that have pervaded our social structures. I
Hmm.
think we are still away from getting to a point where the biases completely end. And I think I actually recently read a book about this also called Invisible Women, and it points out all the ways in which we succumb to this male default bias, which is that
Yeah.
everything we design, all our institutions, all our products, all our ideas, we think of it purely from a male perspective. That how would this feel for a male? And we totally forget that almost half the population is female and they have different needs and wants and desires. We have to build all our ideas, institutions, products for them as well, right? In fact, even transgenders and all the other kinds of
Hmm.
varieties of people whose needs would be probably very different from male, right? Simple examples like pianos. I mean, pianos are designed such that I mean it's very difficult to use it for a female hand, which is typically smaller than a male hand. But pianos were
Okay.
designed for males, so that is why you have lesser number of female pianists in the top list. So
Wow.
that's just one example. Even in our corporates, the stairs are very narrow because the mental model is that it's designed for a male shoe. They forget that women also wear heels and all, which are broader, and it can be very difficult to climb for women who are wearing heels. Or they are made of transparent glass because nobody thought that someone from below can look up. And if a woman is wearing a skirt, that can get very uncomfortable. So these are like small examples of how in designing things we almost forget about women and their needs also. If someone really had the data on this, or even cared to have a woman in the designing process,
Hmm.
maybe a lot of these
Hmm.
problems would not exist. But that just shows you that these biases are by design inculcated into most of our policies, institutions, products. And while efforts are underway, I think it will take a while before these things totally fade away and we reach a world where bias is not built into our design.
So just the second part of my question was that, so as a founder, as a leader, and as a male founder, let's talk about that. So what is Minimalist doing to just to look at, cater to this point?
Right. So we actually try a lot to. So integrity is one of our core values, and so literally every time people join the company, we have these founder orientations where we try to really harp on this value of integrity, where there is to be no bias on gender or any of the other kinds of slottings that people succumb to.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
gender is something that we really highlight, and even in our interview processes, we try to make sure that there is no such bias. In fact, in our organization there are more women than men, and you said
Okay.
business development, most of our business development and account management team is full of women, so we actually have more women in those roles than males. That just happened naturally, it's not by design. Just naturally our organization has more women, but other steps also that we take is try to harvest more perspectives from women. There are more women in our leadership team now than earlier, so I think their perspective also matters a lot. And I think the more you keep women in managerial and leadership positions, the more they can bring a nuanced perspective of how maybe if our policies or decisions are very male biased, they can bring in that different perspective and correct us in our thinking also. So that even on this Women's Day, we had an initiative where the human resources team was actually reaching out to women and asking them, is there something as a woman that you feel that the organization is doing in a wrong way? Can we improve on some aspect purely from a gender perspective? So those kinds of initiatives really help in bringing out that balance, which is uh, so badly needed across all companies.
I think it's time that we, start to walk the talk rather than talk the talk. We should not take those steps like you guys are taking. I mean, all the companies, I mean, people have started taking this into consideration. ये बहुत हो गया कि equality है, but in practice it was never there.
Right.
So kudos to you, Sahil. Now coming to the other side that I could explore from your blogs. So I think your blog gave me a pretty good insight to you, how you are as a person. So then there is a front of it wherein you are a founder, you are, a leader and all this author and everything. And then there is the other side of it, which is the spiritual side of Sahil. because I saw a lot of blogs around spirituality, around our how the society is and everything. So tell us something about that, the spiritual side of Sahil. Are you into meditation?
Yes, yes. So I actually started meditating in 2019. Um, I was delaying it for the longest time, and then one day I was going to meet a college friend in Pune, and he said, "Just start it now. I mean, why delay?" And I realized it, and that is one of the biggest lessons, that if you have to start something, you have to do it that very next
Yes.
moment, because inspiration is perishable. The moment you are seized with inspiration, just do it that moment. Moment you say,
Hmm.
"I'll do it tomorrow. I'll set a calendar. I'll set an invite, reminder, blah blah." It's never going to happen. So on the way back from Pune, downloaded the Headspace app and I meditated for 10 minutes, and it was like good. Yeah, this is good. Maybe I'll just start learning from this and develop a habit over time. From there, I started meditating every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then went from guided to semi guided to unguided, then stopped using the app. Ultimately, the goal of using an app is that after a point, you shouldn't really need it. You've
Okay.
now learned at least the basic technique of, and these apps only focus on breathing, right? So after learning, I was practicing half an hour every day, and I'd applied for a Vipassana meditation course in 2020. But because of COVID, I was not able to go, unfortunately. But I still was meditating every day. Finally, I got the golden opportunity in April 2021, and I went for my first 10-day Vipassana meditation course then, and that totally changed my life. That was literally a life before Vipassana, and there was a life after it, and the change was just profound. It was absolutely radical, and that's why I've been trying to go for a 10-day course every year. So I went for one in 2022. I went for one recently, in like just a couple of weeks back. Total transformation that you can achieve if you genuinely understand the technique and practice it every day. So yeah, I really am into it. It's a purely scientific meditation based technique that helps you eradicate the deepest impurities hidden in your unconscious mind. And as a side effect, you become much more calmer. You become much more equanimous. You have lesser anxiety, stress, anger, hatred, ill will. All of those defilements that we humans are full of, those start reducing, and you're much happier and peaceful in life. I would strongly recommend it to everyone.
So if I have to just delve a bit more into your Vipassana journey, so what did that do to you? I mean, what are the changes, what are the tangible changes did you feel in yourself
Right.
before and
So
after Vipassana?
yeah, so like I said, I think um, the changes are just profound. These are the side effects, but what happens is I realize that I am much more able to handle disappointments in life. Now it's not it. So what happens is when you encounter some disappointing input, you tend to get sad, or even if not
Hmm.
sad, you ruminate over it and think over it for a very long time. That has totally reduced, almost gone away, I would say. And I'm not saying I am a special person or some unique human
Hmm.
being. Everyone who practices regularly and understands and applies this technique, as thousands of meditators have benefited and observed the same effects in their life. So sadness, disappointment, anger has drastically gone down. Anger has almost, there are almost no situations when I don't remember the last time I got angry, in the sense that I
Okay.
felt like shouting or doing something. There's a very big increase in compassion that a person experiences after this. You feel compassionate love for all beings, and not just human beings, but all kinds of plants, animals, all sentient life. You stress, anxiety, all of these things completely reduce. Even your ego takes a big hit. You slowly start coming out of this self-centered view that we all naturally have. We think like we are the center of the universe, but we are not. So your love and compassion for other beings increases. And I think you also try to help others, and your gratitude also increases. So everything in life looks like a bonus. Instead of feeling that, oh, I didn't get this, or I wanted that but it's not happening, you feel like, okay, what I have is so valuable. I should be so thankful and grateful. Every morning you wake up with gratitude. These are just some of the side effects. Main effect is that your mind is becoming purer and purer. You're losing a lot of those mental defilements that put you into that cycle of craving something very deeply,
Hmm.
clinging, or aversions. I hate this. I don't like it. I'm angry. I'm annoyed. I'm disgusted. I'm sad. I don't want it. You come out of those cycles slowly. Of course, It's a very long path. I'm not saying I've become some different kind of a human being altogether, but this improvement is so drastic that it has convinced me that this practice is very, very important to lead a peaceful and happy life. And that's why I keep recommending it. I keep writing about it.
So I believe, like we have in India, जैसे Vipassana India में, I think there are parallel practices in Southern America. I think Avaska या कुछ कहते हैं उसको. There are certain practices that are there. It's more prevalent in South America. Avaska, I think it's pronounced like that. Then there are other practices as well. So are these all practices on the same theory that it calms your mind? It really, helps to think the broader picture that is there. Not
Uh,
ki,
the
yeah,
ayahuasca, I think, is a psychedelic. So it's
okay.
a very different mode of accessing altered states of consciousness, but it's very different from meditation. Meditation, in this practice, there is no room for intoxicants or
Okay.
psychedelics or anything like that. It's just the way the morality of this practice is designed. Because if the mind has to do meditation, it has to be very sharp, it has to be very subtle, and
Hmm.
it has to be free from all these intoxicants which weaken the minds. And one of the one of the checkpoints in this process is mastery over the mind, gaining a sense of control. Because all of life we are our mind slaves, right? We
Hmm.
are slaves to its moods and swings and whatnot. We have to reverse the process. We have to gain a sense of control and conquer our minds, and only then we can begin the process of purification of attaining deep wisdom. So in this, there is no intoxication. Of course, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy is something that has helped a lot of humans. I read a book on that also. It's called How to Change Your Mind. So psilocybin, which is what we call magic mushrooms, right? Psilocybin,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
ayahuasca. I think there is a lot of research going on these psychedelics, but not like you pop a psychedelic at home and you enjoy the chill
Right.
vibes that you get. Psychotherapy assisted psychedelics have a lot of research going on, and there are medical benefits. They have helped people come out of depression and other mental disorders. But it's a very different way of tackling problems, I feel. Uh, Meditation is something that is valid for every human being because it solves universal mental problems that we all face, which is to constantly crave or constantly feel aversion. Every moment our body is generating millions of those reactions and they're getting stored in our unconscious. This is a process of eradicating those mental defilements. So it's a universal remedy for universal human problems.
Okay. So I will ask for two advices from you. One is, if someone is starting their meditation journey, so what would be your advice uh, on the lifestyle changes, on the dietary changes, right? So that they can have maximum benefit of the meditation. And there are people who would start meditation, but it takes time to, actually see those effects in your lifestyle. So you have to be patient. So what exactly is your advice? And the second question would be, what is your advice for young entrepreneurs?
Right. So generally, I stay away from giving a lot of advice because I think there's a lot of it already. But I will still try to share some ideas that at least I have noticed. They may not be correct, so do your own research. But still,
Yeah.
since you asked um, about lifestyle and health and eating and drinking habits, so that's a very interesting question that you asked. So before going for this retreat for this Vipassana course, I was or rather not before, but probably for most of my life, I'll say the first 27 years of my life, I was a hardcore non-vegetarian. I used to eat meat all the time. Like every meal was full of one kind of meat or the other,
Hmm.
and I had to travel for that across countries or even within the country just so that I could eat, and everything was meat for me. And after this retreat, or probably just a few months before, but it got reinforced after this, I had quit non-vegetarian. If I actually quit non-vegetarian 3 months before I went for my first course, because I had read about it and I realized that the this is a despicable act and it's a very cruel act and it has a lot of health consequences for us and it is very bad for the climate also. There's a bunch of reasons that's why I'd already quit. But if I hadn't quit, I would anyway have quit after going for the course because I was still drinking through
Hmm.
before I went, and after going for the course, I also quit drinking. But these two things are also against the five moral precepts, which help in maintaining a good meditation practice. Is that you will not kill anyone and you will not get intoxicated, and those are very valid. They are not just rites or random rituals that you have to follow because someone said so. It's because both meat eating as well as intoxication really put your mind in a very different state, which becomes incapable of meditating effectively. Alcohol we can all understand, but apparently non-vegetarian also affects your mind's
Hmm.
ability. And anyway, even if it's not meditation, anyway, I think alcohol is enough. Meat eating has enough arguments against it for you to consider quitting it. But yeah, those are the two big things um, that I changed and that I feel are very important if you really want to build a good meditative practice. The other thing is before meditation, it's recommended that one doesn't eat a lot of food because when you sit down cross-legged and meditate, it's best if you have not eaten a lot. And that's why when you go for a second retreat onwards, you become an old student because you've already done one course, right? So for old students, there is no food beyond 11 a.m. in the course. So
Okay.
after 11 a.m., you straight away eat next morning at 6:30. So it's effectively a
After 11 a.m.
yeah,
So that is almost what 19
19 hours.
hours of.
Yeah. At
Okay.
5 p.m. in the evening, you probably get some Nimbu Pani. But yeah, that's
Mhm.
it. So effectively a 19-hour fast, and I think that's more effective over there. It's not that you have to do it at your house every day, but the lesser you
Hmm.
eat, the better it is for your meditation because you can focus. If you've eaten a lot, you're feeling very heavy, the mind just gets distracted. If you have ever eaten a lot and you even sit for work, you feel lazy, your mind is always going on the heaviness. You can't even do normal work, leave alone meditation where you have to observe the body and the breath. So yeah, those are two, three things.
So just to add on to that, what in your opinion is the best time for meditation?
So the recommendation is that practice once in the morning, once in the evening, 1 hour each.
Okay.
When you go for the course, they say that to continue the practice, do 1 hour morning and evening. So there's no perfect time as such. I try to do it in the morning once at 8:30, 8:30 for 1 hour, and in the night before sleeping for 1 hour.
Okay. Okay. Now coming back to my other question, which is more onto the entrepreneurship journey you're on. So there are a lot of where India is on a after the Shark Tank effect. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who are coming into starting, which is a good thing, obviously. Uh, so what would be your advice for them? So since you have been someone who has just started just out of college, you did not had any corporate experience as such. So you just came out of college, and within the college only you started it. So what would be your advice for young entrepreneurs, because there are many things that could affect someone's psyche, right?
Yes.
So if someone has started in early, if the business succeeds, the money comes in quick. As a young mind, there are a lot of people who cannot handle that success, cannot handle that money. So, what would be your advice in those terms and
Yeah.
in generic terms also?
Yeah, since there is no specific problem or situation on which I have to comment, the advice will also be very general. But I would say that one thing is that, of course, for the viewers, they should realize that it's not necessary that you have to become an entrepreneur. Not everyone has to become an entrepreneur. I think,
Right.
of course, India is seeing a surge of new entrepreneurs who are making lots of money, and there are so many PR headlines of how much
Hmm.
money they have raised, and it all glitz and glamour and it looks sexy, right? But behind that sexiness is a lot of pain and fear and uncertainty and doubt also, and that also wrecks a lot of people. So it's not compulsory that you have to sort of feel the fear of missing out. I think a lot of people just enter the journey because of this alluring sight of people raising money and living a flamboyant life, but it's very complicated. It's not as easy, and not everyone has to do it necessarily. If everyone becomes an entrepreneur, the world won't run anyway. There is
Exactly.
ample room for people doing jobs or being consultants or freelancers or probably working in the social space or whatnot or being artists. Right, there are hundreds of career options. It's best to just do what you enjoy, or even if you do something you don't enjoy just for the money, there are other ways to enjoy life. I think what ultimately matters is how much time are you spending with your loved ones or spending time doing things you really like. So probably spending more time on that instead of just pursuing success. Of course, I know it's easy for me to say because I've
Hmm.
built a company in the last 7, 8 years, but what I've realized is that people who have built multiple companies, people who have made millions or billions, they still continue to be they continue to crave for more and more and more, and the desire for more never ends. There's no end point. People think I'll end after this, then I'll end after this, then I'll end after this. It never ends. So of course, this dopamine mechanism ensures that it
Yeah,
never ends, and we all are victims to that. So I would just say that it's not necessary. What's necessary is to just figure out what you really enjoy, spend time with people you love, and craft a happy life. And to do that, of course, meditation is best way to get there. Meditation and of course the reading is something I would prescribe, because reading puts you out of your narrow worldview and shows you the beauty there is in the world, the questions that thinkers have thought about for thousands of years, and there's so much that we don't know. It just shows us how insignificant we are, and that's very important to zap out of our self-centered view.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sahil, let's just put you on the spot and ask just one last question. 3 books that you would recommend. 3 business books.
Business books.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I leave
I
it to you. I leave it to you now. Let's not, constrict it to only business books.
Sure.
Let's open it up.
Sure. The reason I laughed is because maybe you would find this contradictory, but business books constitute a very small percentage of the books I read. So
Okay.
I go much beyond business books, because I feel that business is something we all anyway spend so much time
Hmm.
on, but there are so many other interesting fields to learn from, right? Like history or psychology or philosophy, science and anthropology, so much, right? Fiction, I read so much fiction to understand perspectives from around the world. If you had to ask me for a few recommendations, I'll probably say right now I'm reading this book called How Emotions Are Made. It's a very interesting book. Highly recommended. It shows us how emotions are our own construction. So we don't observe reality. We are constructing our reality as we observe the world. So very interesting. That is one. One book I would strongly recommend is Being Mortal by Dr. Atul Gawande. Uh, it also talks about end of life problems and how you should think about your near and dear ones when they are closer
Hmm.
to the end of life, and plan that, because that's a conversation we never have with our parents, our
Right.
aging parents and all, and we don't know what their priorities are, let's say when they get hit with a terminal disease. So we want to always continue the treatment and make them go through severe pain just because we can't
Hmm.
come to terms with the idea that they're going to go away, but we never ask them what are their priorities, what do they want. Sometimes they want something very different, but we just don't know that. So uh, that's one very interesting book. I'll also name a business book since you started with that. Made to Stick is a very nice book on communication and crafting sticky communication, ideas that really stick. So that also gives techniques for crafting very, very sticky ideas. And I would strongly recommend it because it's full of anecdotes and stories and case studies. And they also have an idea clinic where they give you a problem statement and ask you to sort of create some communication and using the principles that they have defined, and they show you how it's done. That's a format we have also adopted in our book. We have practice briefs at the end of every chapter, and we reveal our solutions at the end. Of course, there is no one solution, but that really helps. And a lot of people have sent us their entries and their ideas and how
Okay.
they would approach those problems, because you learn the most by doing, right? So that is, of course, a very good approach. So those are
So
three
when I
books.
asked you about the books, so I thought that one of the recommendation would be the Think Like the Minimalist, but it was not there.
No, that I think, of course, is recommended, but I won't blow my own trumpet. That is for
Okay.
the readers to decide. But yeah, there's so many. When you ask me,
Hmm.
every time someone asks me, there are like so many books that come to mind, but just choosing three, four is very difficult. But yeah,
Right.
I have multiple articles on my Substack Learning Machine where I've
Yeah.
recommended non-fiction books, world fiction books. I'll be probably publishing another book recommendations article next week or this weekend. So I keep talking about books on my Substack also.
I think that your Substack list is that your personal blog that you have. It is, I mean, if someone can just start reading that, they will have a lot of perspective about what's going on, and on generic terms,
Exactly.
right? So
In
I
fact,
think that's a
what I realized is that people want to read. People want to learn ideas.
yeah.
Somewhere or the other, either they're not getting the time or the motivation or the inclination to hold their attention for
Hmm.
300 pages. So maybe for some reason they are not. But the
Right.
thing is that some of the best ideas are actually captured in these books. So what I do is once I read, I always take notes, I try to sort of capture some of the best intriguing ideas of mental models, and that's what I do on my Substack. So a lot of these is across various learning sources. Books is of course one, but there are podcasts, there are long form articles, there are videos. So I try to sort of create a, and that's why it's called the learning machine, because it's my own learning machine, and I hope it's part of your learning machine also once you read through it. And yeah, so that's one of the biggest reasons to sort of go through it, because you can constantly learn and update yourself and change your mental model.
Sahil, what? Uh, I have just started podcasting. So when you speak to people day after day, you keep on talking to people, get a perspective of them. You start realizing that when someone is starting to open up with you, and with you, I felt it was the second half of our discussion. I think after 20 minutes or so, that you really opened up. When we got over that entrepreneurship, the generic stuff that you everyone would ask you, when you got into the zone of spirituality, meditation, when we started the discussion, there was some other Sahil that I could really gauge. So it was lovely, seeing that side of you. So I wanted to have that discussion.
Of course.
So
I find
thanks.
those things very enriching, because that's where
Right.
most of life is. I think most people think that life is all about business and making money and growing
Hmm.
up in the ladder, but actually it's the other half that's much more
Exactly.
interesting.
Thank you, Sahil. I think it was a wonderful conversation that I had with you. And as I mentioned to you, I think the second half was my favorite part. I hope the audience watches the entire podcast, but that second half was my favorite takeaway. I mean, it's the entire takeaway for me from this podcast. I hope that you also had a wonderful time, and we will someday again sit and have a podcast when we only talk about spirituality and meditation. I think that in itself is a huge topic, a huge discussion that one can have.
Absolutely. No, it was
So,
a pleasure, and thank you very much.
thank you, Sahil. Thanks a lot, and we hope to have you soon again on the iRonik show.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.